It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Snow, rain and treacherous conditions, the winter weather that's hit the country as people head back to work and school. Stuck on the tarmac, flights grounded as transport infrastructure is worst hit, with more snow on the way. Wild weather too in the United States. Warnings for more than 60 million people in 30 states from the middle of the country all the way to the East Coast. Also tonight, he doesn't have what it takes. Elon Musk turns on Nigel Farage and calls for a new leader of Reform UK. Bringing the NHS into the 21st century, the government defends its reform plans ahead of a major speech by the Prime Minister. In sport, Manchester United deny Liverpool all 3 points in a Super Sunday thriller at Anfield. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Wintry weather brought widespread disruption to the UK today, with warnings still in place for most of the country. A number of airports, including Manchester and Liverpool, were forced to close their runways, with flights either diverted or delayed. And as the country heads back to work and school tomorrow, an amber warning for snow will remain in place overnight for parts of Lancashire and Cumbria. Well, let's take a closer look at the details. Areas like the Pennines got more than 20 centimetres of snow, and there's more to come. Temperatures have varied. On the Isles of Scilly, the mercury reached a mild 13 degrees Celsius, while Loch Glascarnock in northern Scotland recorded an overnight low of -11. This was the picture at airports today, after heavy snowfall resulted in runway closures, flight cancellations and delays. Meanwhile, as fans braved the snow on Merseyside, there were doubts about today's match between Liverpool and Manchester United at Anfield. It did eventually go ahead. Our North of England correspondent, Shingi Mararike, reports from Ilkley in West Yorkshire.
In a day of disruption, the North of England felt the deep chill most, with parts of Yorkshire seeing 17 centimetres of snow. And while sledging seemed like the quickest mode of transport, major motorways and A roads were brought to near standstills. In the air, a similar story. Manchester and Liverpool John Lennon Airport closed their runways for several hours on Sunday morning due to heavy snow. Leeds Bradford reopened in the afternoon, but told passengers to expect disruption well into the evening. While there are also delays at Bristol Airport and abroad, as aircraft got back into position after flight cancellations.
Due to fly out on Friday, we're meant to be back in the UK, obviously Friday night, Saturday morning. We're just stuck here now in Berlin. We've had to rearrange. We've had rearranged support now from a hotel. The first night we've had to make our own arrangements for the next few days, and Ryanair sorted us a flight on Tuesday now, which obviously cuts into a working week.
It wasn't just departure boards that were uncertain, but the sporting schedule too, with Liverpool's tie against Manchester United briefly thrown into doubt. Once the authorities okayed the early evening kickoff though, fans made their way through the slush and into the gates of Anfield. Some had more challenging journeys, but were glad to see the game go ahead. You're from Norway and you travelled all the way to this game.
Yeah.
Were you worried when they said it might be postponed?
Yeah, I was a bit worried. I'm really lucky to be here today, so I'm really glad. Yeah.
I stayed up till about 2 a.m. just checking the weather outside because we had traveled from New York to come watch this game, and we've been here since last Monday. So this was a whole trip. It was for his 16th birthday.
Elsewhere in the UK, wintry conditions also took hold. Thousands of homes and businesses have been left without power overnight in Ireland. The south saw some snow too. This was the picture in North London. Tomorrow, Britain is meant to get moving again, with people returning to school and work. But the fear is the chaos caused by the snow, ice and rain could continue. As the snow subsides, concerns now turn to ice and flooding, with a number of alerts in place, meaning the chill and the cocktail of difficult conditions it brings with it will continue into the week. Shingi Mararike, Sky News, Ilkley.
And Shingi is live in Ilkley for us tonight. Shingi, what are the updates? What's the situation likely to be like further into the evening and into tomorrow?
Well, Gillian, this weather isn't just severe, but it's constantly changing, which is why the Met Office are updating those weather alerts. So we now know an amber weather alert is in place covering Lancashire, parts of Cumbria and parts of the Lake District. And that could lead to up to 15 centimetres of snow. That is in place until 6 a.m. tomorrow. Where we are in Ilkley, it is still snowing. The weather alert is in place until tonight. And then that will move and be replaced by a yellow weather warning for snow and ice. So it is still a deep chill which has got the country in its grips. And today has been a story of disruption from the southwest to the northwest and to the northeast where we are. So we know many people woke up to cancellations of their flights, or many people had their journeys cancelled. And in fact, in the last few hours, Bradford Airport have put out a statement saying that there are still crew and passengers who, in their words, are displaced. And we know of people who have been flying to Leeds, who have had their flights diverted to Manchester and then spent hours being stranded on flights in Manchester Airport on the wrong side of the country. And like I say there in my report, Britain is meant to get moving again tomorrow. People will be returning to school, they will be returning to work, but the temperatures are actually set to plummet even further going into next week. So this concerted cold snap and the havoc that it could bring looks like it will continue.
OK, Shingi, thank you very much. The UK isn't the only place where the winter weather is causing disruption. Forecasters in the United States say a storm there could deliver the heaviest snowfall in a decade. Around 60 million people across 30 states are living under weather alerts, with severe thunderstorms and the possibility of tornadoes and hail also predicted in some regions. Ashna Horanag reports.
This lorry is one of many to lose control on this icy highway in Kansas, slipping down the embankment and jackknifing. Here's another, also driven off the road, that's coated with freezing rain. This car was propelled into oncoming traffic as another driver narrowly dodges it. Snow, ice and plunging temperatures are creating a cocktail of chaos across the central states of the US. This lorry brought an entire highway to a standstill. Arkansas, Kentucky, Virginia and here in Kansas, where they're expecting up to 35 centimetres of snow, have declared states of emergency.
This roadway is very slick, very, very slick. So let me get some traction here and watch my feet here. Ready for this? That's what we're dealing with out here. And it's not getting any better, it's getting worse. So get off the road.
Almost 60 million people across 30 states are under weather alerts. Salt shovels and cans of soup are flying off shelves as Americans hunker down.
We're talking about treacherous road conditions, several millimeters there of freezing rain. That's attaching itself onto trees, power lines, and I think we're going to be seeing widespread power outages everywhere from the center of the United States, so Kansas, all the way east to Virginia.
Places like Virginia are preparing for its arrival. The hard freeze may even reach as far south as Florida, as America braces for a battering that some regions haven't seen for more than a decade. Ashna Horanag, Sky News.
Elon Musk is appreciated by many, many people in the UK. Reform's deputy leader told Sky News today. Just hours later, the world's richest man was calling for Nigel Farage, Reform's leader and figurehead, to be replaced. He doesn't have what it takes, said Mr Musk, who has been critical of the British response to grooming gangs and historical child sexual abuse. Our political correspondent, Tamara Cohen, reports.
Elon! He was a proper hero.
Nigel Farage and Elon Musk, seemingly a union of minds ready to shake up British politics. And then an online bombshell from the world's richest man via his network X. The Reform Party needs a new leader. Farage doesn't have what it takes. Just 3 weeks ago, they were side by side as Mr Musk stepped up his almost daily attacks on Keir Starmer's government. But Farage doesn't agree with Musk's support for Tommy Robinson, the jailed far-right activist. Is that why they fell out?
The fact that he supports me politically and supports reform doesn't mean I have to agree with every single statement he makes on X. You know, I will, at the inauguration, have a conversation with him on a variety of things. This will no doubt be one of them. But I think the media are getting too hung up on this.
Later, Nigel Farage tweeted about Mr Musk's call for him to step down. Well, this is a surprise. Elon is a remarkable individual, but on this I'm afraid I disagree. My view remains that Tommy Robinson is not right for reform, and I never sell out my principles. Their fallout comes as Musk and Farage have reignited the issue of grooming gangs, revealed over many years to have been operating in towns such as Rotherham, Rochdale and Oldham, involving men of mainly Pakistani heritage, targeting vulnerable white girls, police and councils, failing and even blaming the victims. A Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, was revealed to have rejected a call by councillors in Oldham for a national inquiry into it, saying it should be up to local authorities. The Health Secretary says child sexual abuse in various settings has already been the subject of a long inquiry.
What we've said is we would encourage Oldham to have an inquiry. We would absolutely support them doing that. But in terms of a national inquiry, we've already had one. We should actually just get on with it, which is what the Home Secretary is doing.
What does he think about Musk's swipes at Keir Starmer and claims Jess Phillips should be jailed?
It's a ridiculous thing to say. It's ill-informed. It's not fair on either of their records. As Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer opened up historic cases so that people who got away with it, we went after them.
The father of one victim sexually exploited by a gang from the age of 13 says there needs to be a national public inquiry into grooming, as it's still as bad as ever.
I'm glad Elon Musk has highlighted it because it's got media attention.
You want a public inquiry. What do you think that would achieve for victims like your daughter?
The reason I want that is to look at missed opportunities, to make local authorities and professionals and the police accountable.
Keir Starmer will face new questions about grooming gangs and how he handles the stream of criticism from Elon Musk, soon to take a senior role in the Trump administration, although apparently now an enemy of Nigel Farage too. Tamara Cohen, Sky News.
The NHS could go the way of Woolies and collapse if it doesn't modernise, the Health Secretary told Sky News today. Wes Streeting made the comparison to the former high street chain as he set out plans to upgrade the NHS's mobile app. He was speaking ahead of Sir Keir Starmer's first major speech of the year on health tomorrow. Our correspondent Paul Kelso reports.
As the health service faces its annual winter test, ministers want your smartphone to replace the receptionist phone as the starting point for how we engage with the NHS. Health Secretary Wes Streeting putting an app upgrade top of a list of reforms to be set out by the Prime Minister this week.
The NHS should feel as easy, convenient and modern as the other services we use in our lives. And you will see a wide range of reform we're putting in place to modernise the NHS, to give it the tools to do the job, to bring it into the 21st century so the NHS doesn't go the way of Woolies and collapse, but is actually a service fit for the 21st century.
An app that became ubiquitous during the pandemic uses private tech providers beneath its NHS umbrella. One supplier who already distributes hospital test results via the app says it's well placed for transformation.
I think the NHS has taken a really good approach to bringing the best technology providers under the brand that the British public trust, the NHS app. So they start with appointment booking. They've got a bunch of suppliers that allow that. They've now reached 85% of England's hospitals. The next thing is their medical record, so seeing your test results, having your care plan.
The Doctors' Union is sceptical technology can address more fundamental problems.
I am positive that we focus on technology because we have to do that, but it's important to remember it's not the be-all and end-all. And, many of my patients are elderly and vulnerable, don't have a smartphone, sometimes don't even have access to a mobile phone or a computer. So they won't be able to take advantage of this, and they're the ones who may be left behind.
The challenges facing the NHS are never more apparent than at this time of year, so the Prime Minister will begin his year by promising a host of reforms to address them, including making millions more appointments available and faster referrals, all with the goal of cutting a waiting list that currently stands at more than 7 million outstanding appointments by the end of this Parliament. His political health, as well as the nation's, may rest on some of it working. Paul Kelso, Sky News.
Let's speak now to Tamara Cohen, who's in Downing Street for us tonight. And Tamara, as the political year starts, many challenges for the leaders of all the main parties.
Yes, I think today's events show that this could be an unpredictable few weeks and months. Keir Starmer is back from his holidays and focused, his team say, on delivery. He's giving this speech on the NHS tomorrow about how to cut soaring waiting lists. It won't be quick, but his team say these incremental changes in the right direction is key to restoring public trust. But look, what he's inevitably going to be asked about in the press conference he gives after that speech is many of the comments that Elon Musk has been making and amplifying over the last few days relentlessly about child grooming gangs. He's been throwing all sorts of unfounded accusations at Keir Starmer, saying he stood in the way of justice, is complicit in terrible crimes. I understand Keir Starmer will be defending his record as Director of Public Prosecutions in making sure that as a result of the terrible things that we heard initially in Rotherham from 2011 onwards, that he did play a role in bringing people to justice and will be defending that. But it shows that a US billionaire is able to set the political agenda here and move issues to the top of it. As a result of today, Nigel Farage has had a rather roller coaster day as his relationship with Elon Musk seems to have gone very sour. A setback, of course, in the short term, with the prospect which had been there of potentially a donation of tens of millions of dollars. That seems to be on ice for now, but Reform are in other ways riding high, with their membership now eclipsing the Conservatives. And all this may make Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives wonder how they really get noticed over the next few weeks, with him sucking up all the attention as they head to their big electoral test at the local elections in the spring. You may wonder why what a US billionaire like Elon Musk says and does matters. It matters because, of course, he's close to Donald Trump. And I think all of this is a reminder that when we have that handover of power in the US later this month, it's going to have really big changes and could well dominate the domestic agenda here.
Tamara, thank you. The FBI has released video of the suspect in the New Orleans terror attack during 2 visits to the city in the weeks before the attack on New Year's Day. Agents say Shamsuddin Jabbar visited New Orleans in October and November and recorded these videos using Meta glasses. The footage shows him visiting the area where a truck was driven into crowds in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Meanwhile, the governor of Louisiana has announced a period of mourning for the 14 people killed. One of them was 31-year-old Edward Pettifer, stepson of Tiggy Legburke, former nanny to Princes William and Harry. Governor Jeff Landry paid tribute to Mr Pettifer earlier and thanked his father for his service in the British military.
Like Ed Pettifer of London, England, who worked as a director at an executive search firm, who had relations to the royal family. His family described him as a wonderful son, brother, grandson, nephew, and friend. You know, it's tragically ironic that his father has, for over 20 years in the service of the British military, fought terrorism and terrorists on their soil, so we don't have to fight them on ours. I want to thank him for his service to the free world, and I'm deeply sorry, as all the other families, for their loss.
The winner of the first series of RuPaul's Drag Race UK, James Lee Williams, known as the Vivienne, has died. The 32-year-old's family say they're heartbroken and are incredibly proud of the wonderful things James achieved. Moscow says Ukraine has begun a new counter-offensive in the Kursk region of Russia. Ukrainian troops captured a large part of the region in August. Now, Russia says Ukraine is trying to take ground near the village of Berdin. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his troops have inflicted losses on Russian forces backed by North Korean troops in the village of Makhnovka.
In battles near just one village, Makhnovka, in the Kursk region, the Russian army lost up to a battalion of infantry, including North Korean soldiers and Russian paratroopers, and that's a tangible result.
Sudan's civil war has lasted for nearly 2 years, forcing more than 12 million people from their homes and killing many thousands. It has also endangered the country's heritage. Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt, but the former tourist destinations are now deserted, as our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bagir reports.
A country with so much, left with so little. Vast and barren, depleted by a deadly war. Sudan is home to me and millions of people, but a protracted fight for power has laid our heritage and history to waste.
These pyramids are thousands of years old. They're a symbol of what's happening to Sudan, a place with such a rich history being devastated by conflict and, at the very least, neglect.
These are the remains of the royal city of Meroe, the southern tip of ancient Nubia, a UNESCO heritage site 124 miles northeast of Sudan's besieged capital, Khartoum, emptied as the months of war drag on. With the lack of income leaving its tour guides desperate and depressed.
The situation is dire. We haven't had salaries in many months, not even a little to keep us going. We are praying to God that tourism is restored, that the situation stabilizes and the country becomes safe and people can return to their homes. Tourism is so important for our prosperity.
The riches of the Nubian kingdom of Kush were kept in these pyramids until the gold-filled tops were blown up with dynamite by a 19th century Italian explorer hunting for treasure. No different to how the country's resources are being pillaged today.
This pyramid belonged to Amani Shakhitu, one of the greatest warrior queens in Nubian history, and she, along with others, were symbols of resistance, resilience, and strength for Sudanese women during the revolution and well before that. And now the icon to her greatness stands forgotten, just like this war.
The sad emptiness here reverberates in ransacked centers across the country. Sudan's glorious past crumbling into a desecrated future. Yusra al-Baghir, Sky News at Bajrawiya, Sudan.
Time now to catch up on all of the latest sports news with Alice.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
I can remember standing in the paddock at the Victoria Ground. One of the coaches said, "You had an exceptional tournament there. People are starting to notice you now." And I came away from that evening, I was buzzing.
This is Rich Wilkinson, 16 years old, living the dream at Stoke City. Like so many others, he was released, but Rich took a different path. He trained as a therapist to counsel people with shared experiences.
Are you saying that for you back then, your entire status and feeling of self-worth was bound in with your football?
Absolutely. Everything was football. The confidence it gave me, self-esteem it gave me, this athletic identity. It starts from the moment that people around you are telling you you're good.
Explain to me a bit more about that athletic identity then.
It's almost like this false reality that you create for yourself. So if you imagine after deselection, when that's gone, that athletic identity doesn't serve in the real world anymore. This is where a lot of the problems come for deselected football players, because they're still trying to feed off that person.
I notice you use the phrase deselected footballers, not dropped footballers.
No.
That's
no.
presumably deliberate.
Absolutely deliberate, and I think it doesn't sit very well with rejection. I don't think it gives that player enough credit, if that makes sense. Let's be realistic here. You know, how many deselected players keep football clubs going? You know, without the deselected players, there is no football team. When I sat in therapy myself, one of the first things my therapist said to me was that you did okay. And I'd never thought that. I'd always treated it like a rejection.
Did you feel a failure when you were deselected?
So for me, the family bathroom in our home was the place where I did a lot of my decompressing, processing as a football player. I spent a lot of my time in that room mulling over my game, how I played, what I could do better, what I failed at, what I was listening to. It was a really poignant place for me. So when it came to me getting the news about whether I was going to be taken on with a contract or whether I was going to be deselected, I took the letter to that bathroom and locked the door. I looked at it and it was soul destroying. From that day on, I always told myself that I was okay, but I really wasn't. And it's sad when I look back on it now and I think about it, because I shut football down completely. I didn't watch it ever again. I didn't read about it. I just removed it.
How did you get from there to where you are now?
I was warned that if I go into this area and start looking at this, it could be too traumatic. I might not be able to do it. Because I'd got unresolved trauma, it was dangerous. I'd left the 17-year-old boy in the bathroom. I felt like I needed to go back in mentally to get in. And I worked with a fantastic counsellor who was able to support me in. What I was actually doing was I was telling myself that like my dream was over. It was the first time I'd done it for 20 years. So it was huge. I was so angry that this was still going on all these years later. How can deselected players still be taking their lives, still be suffering from depression, anxiety, addiction, taking drugs, drinking, gambling, totally ruining their lives? How can that still be going on now, 20 years after I experienced?
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Crystal Palace Football Club has become the first in the world to offer permanent technology for fans who are visually impaired, helping to improve their matchday experience. Sky's Molly Malone has visited Selhurst Park to speak to one lifelong Palace fan who's testing out the technology.
For the last 3 years, Neil has been navigating life with impaired vision. Despite his lifelong loyalty to Crystal Palace, it's made spectating and supporting much more difficult. But now he's looking down the lens of a footballing first.
Being able to see the far side of the pitch, players' expressions, the fans cheering, it's fantastic.
His club has invested in this headset technology that improves his sight at match days.
For me, football's always been part of my life. If you ask my wife, she'll say it's my first love. It's enabling people to come back and to be able to be part of something instead of being stuck at home and just, listening, partake, enjoy, sing. It's what it's about. It's the love of the game.
At the click of a button, the headset has 2 different modes. The first acts as a giant magnifying glass, zooming in on certain parts of the match. The second takes live footage from the broadcast feed, allowing the fan to watch the match in real time. And for those with partial vision, it could be a game changer. It was the Palace-Manchester United game in September where it made its debut, relying on a 5G network to transmit the match pictures through the headset, prompting the visually challenged eye to do things it couldn't do otherwise.
It works by stimulating some of the photoreceptor cells. So you can think about it a little bit like when people use hearing aids. It kind of allows them to regain some of that hearing, and it's the same with the headset with sight.
For Crystal Palace, this investment and rollout is a world first. But the hope here is that it expands for fans across the Premier League and beyond it too.
I know there's some meetings going on with other clubs behind the scenes to see if it can be implemented elsewhere. I think it's really important that we all pull together and understand that there is a, 1 in 30 people have a sight issue. So if we can pull together and make this good for our fans, home and away, and other clubs do the same, I think it will make a real difference to the sport.
Has it changed football for you?
For me, 100%, definitely. It's now given the enjoyment factor a complete buzz.
It won't change football for everyone that's visually challenged. Some sight is necessary for it to work. But for Neil, the difference is certainly being felt, giving hope for sport and its most loyal of spectators. Molly Malone, Sky News at Selhurst Park in South London.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal, and political journalist Zoe Grunwald. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Telegraph. Its headline, Musk turns on Farage. I'll be right back with that story and others. Do stay with us.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump, it would appear, is about to learn his fate.